Hi everyone, welcome to the Serene View. Today we are very fortunate to have Paul Dunn with us. Paul is the founder and chairman of B1G1, a global social business that has had over 200 million impacts around the world. And Paul is also a four-time TedX speaker who has spoken about social business around the world. So welcome, Paul. Would you like to just do a quick introduction of how did you even get into this area in the first place?
Well, Serene, first of all, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and I wish I had a background like you, which says the Serene View. But I think I have a serene view anyway.
Yes, you do.
This is actually the view from my work from home office here in Singapore, and we might get to talk about work from home as we go through today, because I don't think any of us could have imagined, the sort of stuff that's been going on, and I know you've been playing a great part in highlighting some of that as well. And hopefully, in our time together today, we can also do that. But my story. When you get 77 years old, your story is a long story, so it's very difficult. But let me shorten it by saying this. I think that all of us in life have moments, and where we are right now, wherever we are, is really a kind of an amalgam of all of those moments and how we've reacted to them. And so, as I look back at the story, it is just one of seeing moments and recognizing quite seriously how lucky I have been and continue to be. I mean, like, how lucky is it that when you're 21 years old, you get headhunted to be one of the first 10 people in an extraordinary organization called Hewlett Packard, or way back when it was,
Wow.
just the thing, and to be sitting down and having breakfast with the guys who literally invented Silicon Valley was like so special.
Wow.
So
yes, that's amazing. Wow.
And and then to go on and found, I think that's the word, one of Australia's first computer companies, and then to be able to go to it was literally get dragged to a seminar
Right.
way back in 1980, December 1980. That's before we understood what a seminar was, right?
Wow. Okay.
And to be in the presence of the late James Rowan,
right.
and to hear him talk about the value that we add to others, and how that literally changed where I went, and that was when I realized that I really needed to speak, as it were, that I had a voice and I could speak. So that was when I founded a company called Results Corporation, and we by 1990 we had 23,000 small to medium scale businesses that we were so very privileged to be doing all of the marketing and work for. And then way back in 2007, actually, after selling that business,
right,
as in the business I just told you about, and then going to live in France, in Provence, and really finding the whole idea of retirement a very challenging idea, right? That's not me, right? And so then I had this amazing moment when I met my co-founder, if you will, of B1G1, that's Masami Sato. And I was mentoring her, right, at the time. She had a food business at the time. In this mentoring session, she said to me, and as you're listening to this, just get the significance of the moment, right? Because she said to me, I changed the session around, because normally, as you know, it's the mentor that asks the question and the mentee that responds. And she said, can I begin by asking you a question? And I said, sure. And she said, well, it's not so much a question. She said, I want you to imagine a world where every time business is done, something great happens in our world. and at the time I was living in Australia, and so I was kind of like an Aussie bloke, you might say. And so my response to that was a typical sort of Aussie bloke thing. Wow, that's amazing, you know. And she said, no. She said, I don't think you understand what I just said. And she said, you know, I've been thinking about it for a while now. And she said, I've given it a name. And in those days, the name she'd given it was Buy One, Give One.
Right.
Now, of course, it's B1G1, but then it was Buy One, Give One. So I said, oh, okay, so how's that work? And she literally said, if I'm allowed to drop someone's name on this, she literally said, well, imagine, Paul, you go down to Harvey Norman and you go there to buy a plasma TV. And I said, whoa, what's it called? Buy One, Give One? I said, Masami, if I go buy a plasma TV, they're not going to give me another TV. What are you talking about? And she said, no, you misunderstand. She said, you go to do that because you want better vision or bigger vision, if you will. So how would it be if when you did that, somebody who could not see got the gift of sight?
Wow.
Oh, exactly. That was exactly my threat. And then at the time, you know, I was surrounded by books as opposed to trees. And she said, or she saw my reaction, right? And she said, or, you know, imagine every time someone sells a book, a tree is planted. And I also had a cup of coffee in my hand. And she said, or imagine every time someone has a cup of coffee, a child in need gets access to life-saving water. Wow. And I went, oh my God. And so that was so then I said, can I be your mentor for the rest of your life? And no, I really did. Unfortunately, after a day, she said yes.
Wow.
I didn't say yes at first. She needed to, quote unquote, educate me a little bit more. And I am so glad that happened. And I don't say this in a light way, because I think there may be questions about whether or not I would be here,
right,
if I hadn't had that moment, right? And I think the insight on that moment is that frequently, you know, I like what Brene Brown, one of my fellow TEDx speakers, said about this whole issue of vulnerability and stuff. And she was talking at the time in her first TED talk. She was talking about the rapid rise or the escalation in teenage suicides. Right. Now that was way back in 2011, I think it was, when she did that talk. Right. But now, the same sort of issues are going on, but more broadly. And what she said is this. She said, and she was kind of speaking to 16-year-old kids, or she said, this is really about 16-year-old kids at this point, but it's actually about all of us. Right. And she said this. She said, connection is why we're here. Now, I just want you to hear that again. Connection is why we're here. And then she added, it brings meaning and purpose, or it gives meaning and purpose to our lives. Now, what I love about that quote, let's do it again, connection is why we're here. It's what gives meaning and purpose to our lives. You can look at it both ways. You can look at, without meaning and purpose, there's no connection. Right? You could read it that way. Mm-hmm. Or you could look at it the other way and say, without connection, there's no meaning and purpose, right? And that's why I think that one of the things we've learned, and I want to expand on that just in a moment if I can, but one of the things we've learned about now, this time that we are in now, right? Yes. And because there's never been a time like that. I mean, I guess that's true about every moment, but you know what I'm saying
that's true.
In the broad sense, right? Yeah, in the broad sense. So in the broadest of senses, the whole issue is that we can sometimes wonder, why the heck we're here. What are we doing, right? Right. We sometimes lose our way. Right. And or at least we feel as though, right, we've lost our way. And one of the great dangers of that is to keep it inside, right? And to think about, oh, well, you know, poor me, you know, I can't talk about that with anyone else, which of course then starts you playing mind games and all of that kind of stuff, which is why one of the things that I always talk about is this whole thing about connection, you know, and the other thing that we've learned in this, or lots of things we've learned, of course, during the pandemic, but I want to come back to that connection piece. That we have always been, but now we know we have always been connected to each other. We've always known that. Well, that, but we've never recognized it, right? Yes. Or not as much as we need to now. That's true. I think there's this incredible shift from me to we. And to realize it's not about us anymore, it's not about you anymore, right? It's about us. And the moment, I'm getting a lump in my throat even talking about this, the moment that we recognize that, things change. Let me give you a very simple example of that. Right. One time, by the way, interrupt me if I'm just rambling.
No, actually, I was very intrigued by this thought because, as you know, I mean, like half to 2/3 of people are reporting right now that they have a mental health.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I think, you know, with this connection, do you think that this is the missing link, you know, to where, you know, businesses or even individuals can help each other with their mental health?
Well, Serene, it's a great question. I'm sure it's part of it, right? I'm sure it's part of it. Let me just, Siri just opened up on my system here and it stops everything I'm saying. So I just let me say, hey, Siri, go away. So, so here's the thing, right? And you know that, you know, I'm not a sort of a trained psychologist and all of that kind of stuff, right? So, but one of the things that I think we are frequently told, or at least I think we're frequently told, is we need to look inside, right? And I understand that. I absolutely understand that. But here's what I know. What I know is when we look outside, outside, not inside, when we look outside, we see things that we otherwise would not see. And one of those things is, you know, others with whom we are connected, others who might be in a different place than us, others who don't have access to water at the beginning of the day, all of that, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so when we then start to see outwardly and then recognize that we ourselves can actually play a part in that. We really can. You know, I think it was one of the interesting things about the pandemic has been, you know, there are lots of businesses, and I don't want to minimize in any way, shape, or form you know, all of the things that have been happening in this past year. But one of the things that we've seen is, or that I've seen, because, you know, I'm fortunate enough to be connected, there we go again, there's that word, with a lot of business owners. And one of the things that I observed is that there's different responses, right? So one of the initial responses was when people go, oh my God, they get in this sort of panic and they freeze and you know, nothing happens and it's just a downward spiral. On the other hand, I see, and I think it was Stephen Covey in his book 7 Habits way back, who talked about you know, having a North Star. Now, you know, we can sort of fictionalize what that means, but I think another way of saying it is that it's something bigger than yourself, right? It's something bigger than yourself. And when you get that something bigger than yourself, all of a sudden, you know, you're driven in a different way, because even though you're this tiny person in this 7.5 billion of us, or how many there is, the reality is that once you start thinking outside yourself, you realize that there's a contribution in some way that you can make. And you also realize this: every single one of us is at our best when we're giving. Now, I don't mean by that, I don't mean, oh, here's $10. I don't mean that. I mean, looking at the right outside where I'm so privileged to be living here in Singapore. I just love this place. I think if I say it long enough, they might appoint me as the ambassador or something. But so no, I do sort of quote unquote get off on how great Singapore is. But right outside where we're talking right now, there's a bus stop, right? Because right next to MacRitchie here in Singapore. And as you know, because you live in Singapore as well, the buses come, like so frequently, it's amazing, right? And so the question is, how do you get on a bus? Well, I get on a bus and I flash my card and go beep, and then I look at the driver. I just look at the driver, he or she, and I say, and people think this is weird, but I say, thank you for stopping. And they're like, what? What did you say? and I, you see, but that, and I have this view that at the end of the day, someone's one of the bus drivers, and how great are they during the pandemic, to do all the things they've done. They might go home to their family and say, it's really weird. I stopped outside MacRitchie today, and this weird guy got on and said, "Thank you for stopping." Or if you take the taxi drivers, I mean, they're amazing, right? And Singapore, those of you who might consider moving to Singapore, we don't really need cars because the public transport is just amazing. Anyway, so you call for a cab, and then not surprisingly, when the cab turns up, I say, hey, thank you for coming to get me. And people go, do you see what I'm saying? And I don't want that to focus on me at all, but what I want us to focus on is that by doing that, by simply saying thank you to someone, we are focusing off ourselves.
Right.
And the moment we start to focus off ourselves, then let's get back to Brene Brown again, we start to connect. Mm-hmm. And then as a result of that, we start to find meaning and purpose, which becomes bigger than ourselves. Now, here comes the disclaimer, right? The warning label.
I was going to ask you, is this something every business can do, or only something like your business? Is that going to be the disclaimer? Because I don't see this as happening in every other business or with every other leader.
Well, no, it's not. It's not. I'll talk about that in a moment, but if you'd like me to. But I think the disclaimer is, this is just me chatting, right? This is not someone, who's studied this, and gone to uni and done, a master's degree. It's simply trying to observe what works. And it's very interesting too. I just this morning, I saw a launch of a new book. This is an Australian one. And the first thing the guy talks about is purpose before profit. He says there are 7 steps to creating a great business. One of them is purpose before profit.
Right.
And I've been, as you know, sort of preaching that for quote unquote preaching that for quite a while. So I also remember about 8 years ago, we had an office at NTU here in one of the universities here in Singapore, and the students were doing a survey on behalf of the government. Mm-hmm. And the survey one, I got, they sort of sought me out. I got asked this question, and the question was, the government is wondering whether it should incentivize social businesses. Socially responsible businesses. Should it offer tax incentives for those businesses? Right. And I said, well, I don't actually think so. And they were really surprised by that answer. And they said, well, why don't you think that? And this was like 7 years ago. And I said, because I think in 8 or 10 years, every single one of us will be a social business.
Do you
In
really
other
think
words,
so?
we
I mean,
oh,
it's been
there's a
almost 8
shift.
years, and we don't see it. I mean, even right now,
Well,
I agree with you. Connection, gives purpose. It probably can help a lot of the mental health issues out there. But is this something that businesses can do? I mean, what can I do if I'm just a regular business? I don't see this happening at all.
Well, yeah, I guess it depends where you look, right? So and maybe I'm in a bubble, and it's quite possible, right? It's quite possible, and I see those things, but I see this this immense shift in people understanding that. I mean, let me just give you a very simple example. This guy, he caused a ripple on the on Wall Street. This is a guy called Larry Fink, or Lawrence Fink, and he's the MD or the CEO of the largest company in the world in terms of funds under management. Let me just read you. I just happen to have it on my screen here. What he said. He said this: purpose is not a mere tagline or a marketing campaign. Listen up intently to this. It is a company's fundamental reason for being. It's what it does every day to create value. And then here's the crucial lines. Purpose is not the sole pursuit of profits, but it is the animating force for achieving them. Profits are in no way inconsistent with purpose. In fact, profits and purpose are inextricably linked. And so one of the things that I talk about with businesses is that purpose powers profit. It really does. And it's just what your focus is. And if you look at the people that are doing great, it's because, as in the businesses that are doing great, right? It's because one of the things that they are focused on, first and foremost, it's not their customers. That's interesting, right? First and foremost, they're not focused on it. They're focused on their people. They're focused on their people, because that's really who your customers are as a leader, okay? And how can you possibly do great things for customers if you're not doing great things for your team? You can't, right? Because you want your team to be doing the great thing for your customers as well. So, and I mean, one of the great things.
What are some of these great things that we should be doing? I mean, no, I think all leaders, I don't know of many leaders who want to go out there and abuse their staff, but just give us an idea. What are some of these great things that you envision companies doing?
Well, there's, in B1G1, there's a myriad of things that we could do. I mean, like, as a for example, so just frame this. I mean, here's the framing, right? The framing is that we're all connected, right? It's not us. Sorry, it's not we. Wait there. It's not me. It's we. Okay. Right. It's all about us. And it's all about the little things that we can do. Like, I just was saying about the thank you things, but let's go a little bit further than that. I mean, just because you and I right now are connected on Zoom, right? I have this little thing, as do a lot of other B1G1 members, that says every time I connect on Zoom, 11 kids get access to education. Wow. Now, just think about that for a minute. Wow. Yeah, just think about that for a minute. How do I feel about connecting on Zoom? I feel pretty good. Wow. About connecting on Zoom, right? Or a lot of people, and let me give you the sort of summary of all this in just a minute. But a lot of the people who are in part of B1G1 now, they do very simple things, incredibly simple things, like, as you know, because you've been a recipient of several of my emails, right? And on the bottom of the email, it says, this email makes a difference, right? And it does, because every time I send an email, person gets access to pure life-saving water every time I send an email. Now, it's not just me. And you, by the way, you might want to think about the magnitude of that. Just think about the magnitude of that. Because sometimes, see, here's the thing, right? Sometimes we think it's massive, massive stuff that we've got to be doing. That's not true. Let me explain why that's not true. if we just think about water, and you know, the whole thing about giving and stuff, and is not, it's not about you know, making any of us feel guilty or anything like that. This is a joyful thing that I'm about to talk about, even though some of the numbers aren't anything but that. But let's talk about it. So you know, as let's talk about water as a case in point. So right now, depending on the estimates, you know, there are somewhere close to 780 million people who don't have access to clean, pure water. Right? So you think about that number, 780 with 6 zeros. Right. Just think about that number for a minute. Now, think about another number. This one is 2.7 million. So think 2.7 with, you know, 5 zeros on the end of it. And every single second of every single day, that's the number of emails that are being sent.
Wow.
So,
all right. Okay. So
you start to multiply.
Who's paying for all this? Is it organizations are paying for it? You know, should business leaders pay for this? Get their own people to pay? I mean, what's happening?
Oh yeah, because why wouldn't you do that? Because you feel fantastic, right? When you do that. But seriously, I mean,
would that take, you know, would that take the drudgery out of work if organizations say that, you know, look, every time you turn up for yet another terrible departmental meeting, we will support somebody's education, or we will, you know, pay for somebody's drinking water?
Well, it's
that is a vision indeed.
The problem. Well, that's you know, you can do that, but what's really interesting is that the team members get to choose, right?
Right.
And they don't have to choose. It's okay. It's okay. They don't have to choose. Nobody has to. Right. But what we know is that, you know, I know. So, for example, I know companies now who have, you know, morning teas, you know, the catch up that, you know, we everybody has, which is supposed to be and is very great for scaling businesses, right? When you catch up, you have a catch up. We have that at 9:50 every morning. And I know some people who have just rephrased or reframed that, and what they call it is morning tea for good. Pretty cool, right? So everybody is, it's just all the labels that we have, and so the reality is, you know, when we started B1G1, we said this is all about the joy of giving, and let's go back again. And again, I don't want to focus necessarily on, you know, giving money or all of those sorts of things. Right. What I want to focus on is that we are all at our best when we are giving, even if that giving is, and I know families who, and I don't want to get personal on this, but I know families who at dinner time will sit around the table instead of in front of the TV. They'll sit around the table and they'll zip around the kids, and these kids are, you know, like 3-4 years old through to, you know, 20 years old. Okay. And the first thing that they're asked to do, and there's not some religious thing or whatever, it's just to say, hey, what are we grateful for today?
Right. Okay.
What are you grateful for today? Yeah. And the moment you start to think about that, you've got to think about really what's going on outside. And so it's just this kind of changing kind of thing that is not focusing on inputs necessarily, but focusing on outcomes. Okay.
I think I completely agree with you, because I think with this kind of connection and outcomes, I mean, we can truly change organizations into some place that is more for mental well-being and actually for the well-being of the world, rather than a place of stress. But we're coming to the topic. So is there anything, like a few last words you want to leave us with before we wrap up? I mean, if there's one thing that you want to go out, you know, out into the world, what is it that you would want to say?
Well, let me just give you a couple of things. Okay. I mentioned my age. I mentioned my age early on, right? Which I don't always. That must be your great interviewing style or something. So, and of course, I look up to people who are older than me. One of those people is 93 years old, right? Wow, okay. And he's pretty famous, and you can find him on all sorts of places. But the place I would love you to go to find him is Netflix. If you've got Netflix, go find it.
Okay, right? Wow.
and it's called A Life on Our Planet. Right? And by the way, this is not a big sort of climate change push or anything like that, but I just want you to go look at it, right?
Right.
And it's by Sir David Attenborough. Now, the reason I want you to see it is, first of all, it is an amazing movie. It's an amazing movie. Now, but what you could choose to be if you were about a, you know, if you had some cause that was bigger than you, right? You could choose to be in people's face about it. You could choose to do that, right? The problem is that when we do that, we, you know, people push back. And so when you get to the end of this particular video, it's just an amazing piece. I won't try and give away the game too much, but he's actually standing in Chernobyl, right, when he says this, and he talks and he points to how the forest has regenerated. And anyway, you really need to watch it.
Yes,
but
I will.
His final words on this are very simple. They're only 3 words, right? So he paints this lovely picture of how things will be, and he says, "These are the final words. Just imagine that." And that's the most beautiful thing, right? Yes. Just imagine that. Yes. Just imagine, you know, us being connected. Just imagine us in every moment giving the best of us, not by thinking about us, but by, you know, thinking about others.
This is Serene, and I'm really grateful that you've joined me today for today's session. I would really be looking forward to more of these sessions with other business leaders. Next week on Thursday, I've invited Rose, who is one of the leading people who have put together the workplace health framework for Canada. And we'll be interviewing her on how this, how does this framework work in Canada, and what can companies take away from the framework that they have implemented. So before I go, I will leave you the same 3 words that Paul has said, which is, if you can just imagine a world where workplace health is a place, workplaces are a place not of your stress, not of your worries, but really a place of well-being where you go there to be restored. Just imagine that. Bye for now.